And it gives you a sense of the viewpoints that can be had, particularly down the road in front of us here. The A19, the Scots Road, the road up to Hadrian's Wall in the Roman era, but the route by which the Scots armies would come and attack York. And York was always the first goal in any Scots campaign. It was a royal city. There's a treasury here, a royal mint. There's a royal garrison here. So to take York really was seen as kind of really rubbing the nose of the English. So, just give you a little sneaky view of the Minster there, just a little flash of Minster in between to look down at a high Petergate. So William the Wallace never made it down here. But the fact is that road inside or outside the walls, Diane. So if I just bring you back round, Diane, which allows this folk to come through, the road that we're looking at straight in front of us is actually looking all the way down outside the walls. So the walls, if you like, wrap around York. Now, that's not to say everything, all of York was always inside the walls. There was always development outside the walls. But this is, if you like, the citadel. So we're looking now down from the walls out towards A19, the North Road to Scotland. So that's the route away from York. But also it's the route by which you'd approach York coming in, if that kind of makes sense. So such was the concern about the force of the Scots that even though William Wallace had been kind of captured in 1305, there was still a great deal of concern about Scots marauders. And so following the dreadful Battle of Myton in 1319, when a bunch of clerics led by the Lord Mayor of York were killed on the battlefield near Boroughbridge, near York, this was all substantially rebuilt. So we're looking here at the internal of the tower, the defensive tower. We are looking at a structure that was largely rebuilt in 1319 in response to attacks from the Scots. So we're now inside, looking down along Petergate into the city. So we'll come around the opposite side, down from where we were before. And if we come down to this side, the signal does drop, so we can't dwell too long in here. But just to give you a sense here, you'll see that there is a staircase that once led us up to the top, so the guards could go onto a higher level to have a good vantage point. What's interesting is we come over here, how well you can see. These, through the portcullis, of course, is a gateway of wood and iron that can come down very, very quickly to stop any raiders coming in, is there are windows here that are orientated all the way up the street. So consequently, from a defensive point of view, it's very, very easy to kind of spot those who are coming, because of course, whilst it's now very developed, lots of traffic, in the medieval period, this would have been open to the fields, as you might say. So consequently, it would be very, very easy to spot those coming along. If you didn't know who they were, are they raiders, are they traders, you can quickly drop this portcullis gate as in front of us. So that will come down with a slam. It will create then a barrier to entry through the city gates can be open. This can come down and then create, if you like, this barrier. But of course, it's permeable. So because it's crisscross, you can hand papers, identification, pay taxes, whatever it may be. So on the one hand, it's both a defensive barrier, but also it's going to come through. So it buys you time. But let's kind of move on through, because I can see the signal is dropping. Hello, those who have just joined us. We are just in Bootham Bar, so we're in the top section of one of the four main defensive towers of York's walls. We're looking at the portcullis here in front of us, in a building that was substantially rebuilt in the early part of the 14th century due to the fear of the power of the Scots. It was during the Wars of Independence between England and Scotland, where for much of the time England was governed from York. It became a de facto capital city because, of course, it was much, much nearer to Scotland. So the kings were here, the treasury was here, decision makers, power brokers, armies were here. And so this was seen very much as the city for the Scots to attack. And whilst they never attacked and held the city, there were frequent raids took place. Coming down, taking captives, doing kind of smash and grab raids along the way. Because from a prestige point of view, obviously it was great to strike a blow against this royal powerhouse of York. But also because York was so wealthy, if they could take hostages, charge a ransom, get paid back, it could fund the armies to kind of live over the winter. So consequently, York was always seen as kind of fair game by the Scots. And even though that William Wallace had been defeated, his successor, Robert the Bruce, was every bit as effective on the battlefield. And so through so much of York's history, It was all about, I know beautiful blue skies, it was all about how to deal with the threat from the north. And of course, it wasn't until the beginning of the 18th century that England and Scotland combined to become one country, the United Kingdom. So in effect, you've got about 600 years where York is absolutely in the epicenter of this kind of titanic generational struggle for power between the kings of Scotland and the kings of England. And of course, you've got the kings of Northumbria in between the two as kind of power brokers, if you like, just deciding from time to time who they're going to support. So the border, if you like, between England and Scotland moves backwards and forwards. Places like Berwick-on-Tweed, Newcastle become England, become Scotland at various times. You know, as these kind of campaigns kind of roll on and on.